We're gonna, yeah, keep talking about your
Okay,
work.
I'm ready.
Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
We're gonna do a little ear training today.
Ooh.
Ear training for distinguishing different aspects of vibrato. How about that?
Yes.
And of course, since I'm a vibrato nerd, but I think this is really crucial stuff
Yes.
because listening to vibrato is a real bellwether of what's going on with somebody's voice. You know, if the vibrato is very even and consistent and doesn't draw attention to itself, generally things are probably balanced pretty well and so on. But the minute,
I'm sorry, I'm stretching my tongue.
I was going, what? Yeah.
I know, it's really distracting. I apologize.
You know, but the minute it draws attention to itself, you go, let me pay more, close attention, and whether it's the extent or the rate or the regularity. And so this is a little ear training exercise that I put together, and we're gonna do kind of one at a time. Okay, so we'll first start with rate, and then extent, and then okay, something changed. Which one changed, and how much? And then okay, now it could be both, and then it could be both, and we might have changed the pitch. And then it could be both, and we'll change the vowel. And then it could be both, and we change the vowel, the pitch, yeah. Okay, because that's real life.
Yep.
Okay, so strap in.
All right. I'm ready.
And I do have the answers here, so there are actually answers.
Okay, correct. Are they on the slide?
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay,
no,
okay.
not on the slide.
Okay, good.
Okay, so each time, I'll play your reference and then something to compare it to, okay? Sorry, Emily's over there looking at pirates now.
No, I'm not.
It's my fault.
Okay, so here's our reference, all right, and these are synthesized. These are not human because we cannot control humans nearly so well as we can. Here we go. So, God willing, this is going to play. Okay. Which sounds probably a lot like ah. That's who it was modeled on. Okay, so again, there's our reference, and then I'm going to start. Do you hear a change? And if so, how much and which direction? Okay, we're just listening to rate. Compared to?
They sound really similar to me.
They are.
Okay.
They're identical.
Okay.
Okay, I was like, that didn't change.
That was just to see if you were alert.
I know. I don't appreciate these types of tests where they're the same. It's a trick. That's why I'm trying to be honest.
We don't like tricks.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to be honest with myself.
And I
Be
loved
didn't
how
hear
you
it.
went.
Yes, I am a child.
Wait a second.
And I won't pout.
What did you call the other device? Sassy arms.
Yeah,
Sassy.
sassy. But then there's also the what you want. Another one.
That's
Okay,
great.
so here we
Sassy
go.
arms.
Here's our reference again. Yes, everything is about Aretha Franklin at
Yes.
some point. Okay, and now compared to this one.
Quicker.
Faster, yeah.
Faster.
Mm-hmm.
How much? A fair amount? A little bit?
Slightly.
At least
Slightly. Enough to be noticed.
At least a third faster.
It was actually 10%
Okay,
faster.
so.
So like 5.5 to 6, that's almost 10%.
Okay. Oh, that is 10%. That's
Okay, all right, here's our reference. Thank you, John. And
Slower.
slower.
Is that also 10%?
10%?
It was 5 instead of 5.5. The reference is 5.5.
Uh-huh.
That was 5.
So that is 10%.
Yep. So here's
That's a big difference.
yeah. So here's 6, just so you can compare.
Uh-huh.
this one's 5. Okay. All right. Now here's our reference again, and this one.
Less than 10% faster, but still slightly faster.
Versus.
I hear slower.
Slower.
Yeah,
Now I
it
hear
is.
slower.
Yeah, it's slower.
I have to close my eyes.
May I ask you a question?
Mhm.
When it gets slower, do you also have the perception that it's wider?
Yes,
And it isn't.
right.
That is something Josh Glasner and I have been testing in some stuff. Okay,
Yes.
we have a new article that is just going to be out in the Journal of Voice on Vibrato perception stuff. Okay. There's your reference, and listen.
Just slightly faster.
Slightly faster. That's 5.8 and the reference is 5.5. Okay, now let's see. So we're getting smaller and smaller, right? Okay, here's your reference. Okay, and here is.
Just like barely slower.
Yes!
Yeah.
Barely.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm closing my eyes. I'm
Yeah.
concentrating very hard.
Yeah, yeah. And just, we started with it's just the rate. You don't have to pay attention to anything else. It's just the rate. Everything else is identical. The vowel, same resonances, the pitch is the same, the extent is the same. The only thing that's changing is rate.
This is making
Okay.
it a lot harder.
Now,
Can I ask a question quickly?
yeah.
So you had just mentioned with Josh Glasner with the perception,
Mhm.
how we perceive it slightly wider. When you say wider, are you saying that the
Extent.
extent is?
The frequency swing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Incense and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And we use sense to talk about vibrato extent because 100 cents is 100 cents. It's a half step no matter where you are.
Yep.
If you used hertz, a half a
It
step
would change.
way high
Right.
is going to be a lot of hertz change,
Right.
but it's still just a half step.
Right.
So we always use sense to talk about vibrato extent.
That makes sense.
It does.
But
Okay, so now, speaking of extent, what a segue. Okay, just an aside, last night at the choir concert, it was so funny, they got finished at the very end, and Dr. Moon came over and did, acknowledging the choir, and Dr. Boyd did the same thing, and it was like, oh, it's Pat and Vanna. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so here's our reference, and this is 50 cents. Okay, so this is basically plus or minus a quarter tone. Okay, so you've got like the average, and we're going 50 up or 50 down. Okay, so come on. That's our reference. Okay, and now let's look at this one.
So since I
Super
didn't hear
small.
any wiggle at all.
super small, yeah.
Super
Yeah.
small extent,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's
Because it almost sounds like there's no vibrato.
10 cents
Yeah.
versus 50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and 10 cents is getting really close to
Straight.
well, it's getting it's down in that area of the threshold where people might not even detect vibrato.
Uh-huh.
According to a study, Randy Wooden, who did her master's here, she did her pedagogy project on this very topic about kind of where is the threshold, and it's really quite small. It's like 19 cents. Yeah. Okay, 19 cents as like plus or minus 9.5.
Right.
Yeah.
19 from the center.
19 total,
The
full.
peak to peak, yeah,
Oh, okay.
which
Peak
is
to
really
trough.
small.
Because that could be shifted up or down, like it could, right, like, is it possible, like, if this is the pitch, could it be higher here, shorter here? It's always gonna be equal?
Vibrato doesn't work that way.
Okay,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
check.
'cause in terms of talking about it, because we're always talking about it relative to an
Uh-huh.
average.
Okay, so it's always gonna be peak and trough is
There
equal.
will be an average, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so here's our reference. Ah, okay. And now here's something to compare to.
A little bit wider. Like 60.
Yeah, so here's the reference. And here's. That's a lot wider. That's double.
Oh, wow.
That's 100 cents.
It's so interesting because I'm not interpreting that as a wobble. I just hear like a darker sound. Or
It also
even,
sounds
even like
faster.
more. That's fine.
Ah,
Like
which,
I heard it faster,
right. Which is a very interesting thing.
but it's not faster.
It's not faster. But what you're getting at is what's known as the rate of frequency change. Okay? So basically the number of cents traversed per second is bigger,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
You know, it's not faster, but the number of cents that
It's
know,
traveled.
Yeah.
is
so-
traveling per second has increased.
Yeah.
Right.
And that seems to be the key, because we found in Randy's study and in what Josh and I just did, that we kind of have a sliding scale. So for instance, in Randy's study, we had, they were, their job was to say, that has vibrato or not, yes or no, and they had a whole bunch of tokens. And these were singers, these were sopranos singing an vowel. And what we found is the threshold, it's kind of a sliding scale, so if you have a wider extent, the rate needs to be slower for it to be perceived. And if you have a faster rate, the extent needs to be narrower. And so it's kind of a sliding scale as to what we accept as non-vibrato, and it gets to this idea of the rate of the frequency, and that's the thing Josh and I are next going to test, is to do, because we did a study that, and I'll get you guys the article, it's very technical, all of his mathematical analyses on the, but we gave people, and it was a PowerPoint slide, and it had a line on the slide, and then there was a bunch of icons where you click on the icon and you listen, and you go, okay, and they were instructed, put them in order of rate. That's all we told them. Listen to these samples, put them in order of rate. You can listen as many times as you want, and if you find some that you think the rate is the same, just stack them on top of each other. And so there was 20 of them, and the thing that we didn't tell people, of course, is that some of them had the same rate but a different extent.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to see how that, and in fact, yes, people did, when they heard a wider extent, they tended to feel that it was a slower rate, even though it wasn't. They heard a wider extent, they were thinking it was slower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a narrower extent, they think it's faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
That's mind-boggling.
Crazy stuff. Perception is
Yeah.
really squishy. I think that's the,
Yeah.
because, and this is really true for you to remember when you're teaching, is that, you have somebody do something, and you go, have them sing it again 1 or 2 times to make sure, because we are so skewed by, what just came before it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when, if I'm going to be honest here, you're teaching and you say, oh, try this, and they do something, and they go, oh, wow, that really feels different, and I go, I don't really hear a difference.
Yeah.
But I go, okay, good.
I'm glad you feel different.
Great, do it again. Let's really, work that in.
Let's lock it in.
Yeah.
So, do you have a question?
I did, I lost it.
Oh, okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
You said that Emily heard blank. Can you tell me what you said?
Rate of frequency change.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Because the rate would have to be faster because there's more sense to go through.
but the
Except
rate
it's
is.
not.
But it's
Yeah.
not, but
Yes.
It
yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
it is.
So, depending on the, the situation, sometimes people will hear the wider extent and they think it's slower.
Mm-hmm.
But, if the rate stays the same and the extent gets quite a bit wider, we're like, oh, it's gotta be faster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had a student here, he had already graduated when you were here, Emmanuel Medina.
He was here while I was here.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a striking vibrato.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little wider in extent and it was fast, and it really, it was exciting to listen to, and the fact that the extent was a little wider made it sound faster than it really was. It was really interesting.
He was parpignon in Havoan.
Yeah.
Parpignon.
Yeah, nice guy,
Yes.
super nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay. We were doing extent.
So 20.
Let's do one more and then we gotta move on. Okay, so here's our reference. And here's compared to.
I hear it the same.
Can't do it on there.
Mhm.
It's faster.
It's wider. The rate's
Wow.
the same.
Yeah, the rate's the same.
It's slightly wider.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
I've done a lot of this and I'm pretty sensitive
Yeah.
to it, but it's wider.
Mm-hmm.
How much?
Yeah,
It's between 50 and 60 hertz, 50 and 60 cents.
yeah.
So it's a pretty small change.
So it went from like 50 to 100, is what you're
No,
saying?
50 to 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just barely wider.
Okay.
Yeah. Versus. Yeah,
it
it's
sounds-
barely wider.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They sound different.
Sounds identical to you.
Yeah, they sound.
It's
really
pretty
similar.
obvious to me, but
It's,
I made this thing, so
I don't
listened to
feel
these a
I don't
ton.
hear the difference in sense, but I'm like it sounds faster to me.
Like, it kinda sounds faster, now I can hear the wider
Mhm.
part. Yeah.
Okay, so now,
Ooh, double jeopardy.
for, is he gay or just European? If you know Legally Blonde.
Yes.
My son played Callahan at the Coast Guard Academy, a production of that.
Oh,
He had a
wow.
blast.
No,
Oh
the
my
Coast
gosh.
Guard did.
He was
That's
really
so
freaking
funny.
good. Oh yeah, they do a musical every year
That's so
at the
cute.
Academy. Okay, so here we go. So is it rate or is it extent? Okay, so you got to determine which one, and then hopefully, like which direction.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, so here's our reference. Okay.
Faster rate.
Faster rate. Yeah, and so a little bit. Yeah, that's from 5.5 to 5.8.
Yeah.
So just a little faster rate. So it seems to be that extent is the more confounding thing for you guys.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would say so.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our reference. And
Extent.
Wider.
wider, yeah. One of the cues, I think, for wider, you may notice that there's a slight amplitude thing too. There's a little more of a fluttery kind of feel to it. And so as the vibrato is swinging wider, it might be swinging through a vowel resonance, and we get a little intensity
Right.
boost as a result of that.
Yeah.
And so that's another cue for, am I hearing a rate change or an extent change? Is there an amplitude thing?
Yeah.
Because that's very, very possible. We did not control for amplitude when we made these. I made these. So that's very possible. Okay, let's do one more of these, and then we're gonna
Make it harder.
raise the hoop higher, set it on fire. Is that what you're saying?
I said make it harder.
Okay, and now.
I feel like it was slower rate.
Okay, listen again.
Well, if it's not slower rate, then it will be smaller extent,
Smaller extent.
but we could hear
Okay.
it as a smaller rate, cause.
Okay, versus.
Yeah, it's definitely smaller
It's-
extent,
it's a
because it's
smaller
closer to
extent.
straight tone.
So, when you have a
Yeah.
smaller extent as well, does it give you the amplitude that you were just talking about with the wider? Or the, yeah, no, okay.
What?
I don't know.
So you said smaller and wider, that's why
I
I
know
got
I did.
confused.
No, I'm talking about the previous one. So
Okay, the
this
wider
is
one.
smaller,
Uh-huh.
right, the other
Yeah,
is
this is a
wider.
narrower extent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's narrow.
Yeah,
and it's wider.
there is something going on with the amplitude,
There
but
is.
it's not.
The same.
Yeah.
But it is an amplitude, okay.
Got it.
There is amplitude.
Okay, so now, is it rate, is it extent, or is it both?
Oh, come on.
You can do this, singers do it all the time.
That's true.
Okay. And.
Wider extent for sure.
Okay, listen to them
Not sure
again.
of the rate.
It's just a
I
wider.
feel like
It's
the rate
just
was the same, yeah. Yeah.
Rate is slower.
Right, what?
The rate is slower.
So
I would have thought that it was faster. Wait.
it sounds the same
It
for
is.
right though.
It is slower.
It's slower.
I'm trying to tap it.
Yeah, it's 5.3 instead of 5.5,
Uh-huh.
and the rate, the extent went from 50 to 80.
Yeah.
So it's slower and wider. I'm gonna see if I can click both at the same time, or
It's
get them
barely
going,
slower.
and you'll hear. Okay. Oh, no, it won't do that. It won't let me play both.
I think if you hover it might.
Okay, let's do one more of these. Here's our reference. Ah.
Faster rate but wider extent.
Narrower extent
Narrower
for sure.
extent.
It's faster and narrower.
How?
It's
It was
straighter to
closer
straight tone.
It's closer to straight tone, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
listen.
Yeah, that's so narrow.
Versus. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty subtle. That's 5.7 instead of 5.5,
So the rate
and
was
that's
faster as well.
30 instead of 50 on the extent.
Okay.
So it's a pretty small change.
Interesting.
Again, one of the things that's really important about being able to hear those subtle little vibrato rate changes, it can be a real cue to the vowels slightly too closed or too open. You know, the rate and the extent. Because if you hear, the rate speed up and oftentimes the extent narrow on a front vowel. This is I don't have a lot of research to back this up, but this is my empirical evidence from the studio that when you hear the rate speed up slightly and the extent narrow and they're singing a front vowel's a little too closed. And think about that, it's just going to be slightly driven. If you're just a little too closed, there'll be just that little, okay?
Yeah.
And conversely, if it's a back vowel and you hear the rate slow slightly and the extent widen slightly, vowel's a little too open.
That makes sense. I've experienced that.
Mhm.
I've experienced that many times
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Yes.
Okay, Lexi, you have that.
I'm processing.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, let's move on. Now, Paul Patinka and I did a study, it's in the Journal of Singing. We did one where we had sopranos, and we had them sing an A vowel and an O vowel. We had them sing with their habitual mouth opening, and then with a ruler, we had them sing with a 1.5 centimeter mouth opening, which is pretty darn small, and then a 4 centimeter mouth opening. And so we recorded them, and we had, because we were interested to see, well, was this true or whatever. Essentially, the answers was if you mess with it either direction, it generally wonks their vibrato rate, but not necessarily what we expected in terms of the directions. And I mean, we probably need to do it again with more subjects and more vowels to test, because we just did 2 vowels on 1 pitch with the 3 different situations. But that's in the Journal of Singing, excuse me. Paul's the lead author. In fact, I think I have that on the bulletin board
You do.
by my office. Yeah, you can take a look at it. Yeah, it was really interesting. Okay. Rate, extent, or both. Well, we just did that. So, okay, rate or extent are both changing, even if the pitch changes. Okay, again, we're getting more and more like real world. Okay. Okay, and this one.
I think just faster rate.
Did you get wider?
I think it was wider.
Mm-hmm.
Is it faster and wider?
It's just wider.
Oh, just wider.
Yeah, because you can really hear like, it's like a semitone almost. Yeah, that's a 75 cent extent instead of 50. So it's half again as big, and the pitch is lower. So I'll do that one more time now that you know the answer. Yeah, that sounds like, it's like a trill.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's our reference. And
Faster.
faster. Yeah, that's 5.7 instead of 5.5. So check it out again. Versus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear it now.
Yeah. The reason it's important to do the training with the different pitches is because, you know, people's timbre changes as they're in a different part of their range. You know, they're doing different things vowel-wise and stuff. And it's being able to hear, you know, say somebody does a leap, and you go, okay, something's going on that top note, because I heard the vibrato speed up, slow down. You know, and that's one of those, hey, could you do that again? And you stand up from behind the piano and you look very intently at them going, what am I hearing? You know, what am I seeing? It's a real bellwether. Okay, here's one more.
I hear wider.
Okay, let's listen.
It sounds the same to me.
You're right. Yeah, that's the same. Okay, now,
Is it because it's a higher pitch, we would perceive it as potentially wider?
not necessarily,
Not necessarily.
no.
I really thought I heard like da 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 da, like
Yeah, a little bit.
for some reason.
Could you do that again?
Da, 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 da,
I
da,
feel
da.
good. Sorry. James Brown.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I'm so thrilled. Lexi and I have a Colorado connection. Years ago, and this is a complete tangent, it's a James Brown tangent. Years ago, they built this new bridge in Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay, they built this new bridge in Steamboat Springs, and they had a competition. People could write in, name the bridge. The winning entry was the James Brown Soul Center of the Universe Bridge, and James Brown came to the ribbon cutting ceremony.
That's pretty cool.
And he was like, "Papa's got a brand new bridge."
I love Steamboat.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, then there's the bridge
Steamboat,
in
there's a
Avon,
bunny
Colorado.
hotel
That's
there.
named Bob.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bob and Avon.
Yes. Okay. So now, I'm sorry, randomness. Listen for rate or extent or both changing, even if the vowel
Ooh.
changes.
Okay.
So now it's the vowel, not the pitch.
Okay.
Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Here we go.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Sorry. Yep.
My brain's like,
Wow,
"E."
Lexi. Wow.
Thank you.
Is it faster?
Okay, let's listen again.
I feel like rate's the same. It sounds equally fluttery, like the same speed. And so I don't know if I hear it going slightly wider, if the half steps are just messing with me at this point, but I would go with same rate, slightly wider. Or the same.
It's identical.
Yeah.
What?
It's the same.
It's identical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, think about an ah vowel where the first and second vowel resonances are close together versus an e vowel where they're far apart. So you may be hearing, since the e vowel, that second resonance is higher in our hearing range a little bit, up towards the more sensitive part, 2000 or so hertz, you may be kind of drawn to the frequency swing of that because you're hearing that area strong where it wasn't strong before with
Yeah.
the ah.
Yeah.
But they are identical,
Mm-hmm.
promise.
That makes sense. So they're
Lexi's
this-
looking at me like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I hate this game.
Well, it's just honestly pretty great because they're the same but different, but they're the same but different because they're the same acoustically, mathematically, and psychoacoustically different, which is the human influence.
Exactly.
And so it's just really like robots versus humans at this point.
Well, I mean, it's how our ear
Yeah.
has greater sensitivity at higher frequencies,
Yeah.
and you're attracted to, because cries of distress are at higher frequencies.
Yes.
I think there's an evolutionary
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
why we're sensitive. Cries of babies are strong, high frequency sounds.
Mm-hmm.
People in pain.
Yep.
Crying out in distress are high frequency.
Yep.
And the fact that also you have the ear canal, the resonance frequency of the ear canal is right around, why the singer's form exists is because it excites that little resonator, and it makes it sound louder than it is, because it's because that's one reason why we are more sensitive to that high frequency band, because it's right in that resonance frequency of that ear canal.
Yeah.
Can I ask a random question about
Random
frequencies?
resonances are great.
Okay, so I learned back in the day because people be like, oh, you're a singer. I'm like, yeah. They're like, can you break a glass with your voice? I'm like, no. And so I think I watched like some video on it, or maybe I asked a teacher, but it was like everything has like a resonant frequency.
Yeah.
And if you match that exact frequency at a like high enough amplitude, it can explode.
You could disrupt it enough.
Because it's like the atoms, right? You can like
Yeah, I mean, granted, the
like humans can't really do that. You would have to like get a computer speaker
Well,
to exactly
humans
match.
can be pretty freaking loud.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's a rare. It would. I mean,
and without vibrato
I'm
too.
saying it's possible, but it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
You'd have to be just right and really close, and
Because it has to be the exact same.
and and it's got to be pretty thin glass or something like
Yeah.
that, and the shape of the glass and all those
Mhm.
kind of things. Yes.
I promise this goes with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There was a girl on TikTok who had this series for a while. I don't know if she's still doing it, but I don't know if she's trolling people, but she's trying to do that. She's trying to break wine glass, and she like gets all the input from people.
Yeah.
And the amount of stupid comments is fascinating. Of like people just trying to figure that out. I'm like,
Yeah.
just Google it. Ask a voice scientist.
Well, yeah, you can, again, amplitude is the big thing. It's like the right resonance frequency, and you're exploiting the weaknesses of that material. I mean,
Yeah.
But it's
What-
anything, right? Like
why
it could
do
be, like, the wall.
airplanes sometimes break apart, Okay, because they were banking at just the right, angle to put certain kind of stresses on the materials, and there might be a little flaw in the metal, and the wing falls off, I mean,
Well, and that's bridges too. Like bridges use,
bridges, the
use
Tacoma
resonance.
Narrows Bridge, listen, watch the video, it's
and you
on.
can hear them, right?
Well, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, there's a video of this. It was a suspension bridge in Washington, and they built it. It's in a fairly narrow canyon, and the wind started blowing, and the thing started vibrating,
Yeah.
and it broke apart.
Yeah.
There's
Wow.
video of it.
Wow.
There's video of it. It's fascinating
Okay, this is back to what we were just
because
listening
that's a resonance thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So obviously it's A to E at the same everything.
Yeah.
So when you're teaching in a class, like when you're teaching in your studio,
Yeah.
and you have a student, and you're trying to get like pure vowels happening with like a similar rate,
Mm-hmm.
then we're going back to like actual function of like articulatories and like making a appropriate space in the mouth, right?
Right. I mean, you're trying to have the most, certainly if we're talking Western classical style, and a very consistent quality is the desired outcome, then you're wanting to keep things as consistent as possible in the output, realizing that what is consistent in the sound might mean very different function.
Figures,
Yeah,
A nice-
just like to
Yeah.
make your voice sound even, singing, a scale on E from F4 to F5, you do a lot of modification of the vowel in order to get a consistent quality.
But the
Yes.
output may
The
stay the
output
same.
is what you're after.
Yeah.
Or at least the perceived output.
Yeah, perceive that.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one more of these, and then we're gonna throw it all in a pot and stir it up. Okay, so here is. And now.
Faster rate for sure.
Mhm.
I think it's faster rate, wider extent.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's drastically faster.
Yeah.
5.8 compared to 5.5, and 75 cents instead of 50 cents. So you're right, faster and wider. Okay, and now we get to Final Jeopardy. So we've got vowel 1, and so the vowel changes and the pitch changes, and the question is what's happening to the rate and extent. Okay, so here's our ah that we know and love. And I'll play play that again. Here's ah.
Same
Sounds the same.
rate, but a wider extent? No, no.
You're enjoying this too much.
Same rate, but a narrower extent?
It's the same saying.
Yeah,
What
same,
the
same.
heck?
It's the same saying.
He's enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, there are amplitude changes because of the
The high
E
pitch.
vowel
Mhm.
is getting close to first resonance of the E vowel. So
Okay,
there are
yes.
some amplitude things going on.
Mhm.
But just because there's an amplitude thing happening doesn't necessarily mean that a rate or an extent has changed.
Correct.
Cool.
The amplitude changed simply because the vowel and the pitch put you in a different relationship with resonances and harmonics. Yeah.
I'm summarizing this in my mind as the physical versus mental, which is acoustics versus psychoacoustics.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, here's one more. Here's the last one. We're going to start with the E vowel this time. And
Definitely wider.
Wider extent.
wider extent is correct. Listen to it again.
I think it's also slightly slower.
It's slightly slower.
Mhm.
Yep. And we changed to ah. We went up a fifth, and probably the second harmonic, an octave above, is we probably are getting a little amplitude thing going on with that because that's getting closer to that first resonance of the ah vowel up there. So yeah, we're not controlling for the amplitude things. They're happening because of just interactions of harmonics lining up or not with a vowel resonance, especially when we change pitch.
Mhm.
So it's a lot to parse out.
Yep.
And what we think we hear and what we actually hear are not always the same. But training like this is really helpful for us as teachers because it's real practical in the studio. What is it I'm hearing?
Mhm.
Why did that draw my attention? Yeah. And I think it's especially helpful, the rate and extent thing. I mean, all three of you are treble voice singers, and we all know and love that octave between middle C and C5, you know,
My favorite one.
which can be the Never Never Land. And that is an area that being able to do some rate and extent discrimination,
Mhm.
particularly as it pertains to vowel, can really be helpful in troubleshooting what do I need to do to help sort that out, you know, in terms of do they need more flow, you know, is the pressure a little too high, is the vowel a little too open, too closed, things like that. And so this PowerPoint, I mean, I could make it available to you just for training purposes if you want.
Yeah.
We'll do it, we will, yeah, I'll make a note to just send it out to you guys.
So basically, this is just really testing, because like if you've been teaching, you have an intuitive nature to like adjust things, particularly with treble voice in that octave range. So now this is just explaining the hows and the whys.
It is, and it's giving you another tool in your toolbox
Yeah.
for what am I hearing, why is it drawing my attention?
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
extra extent of like, well, why do we do the vowel?
Yeah.
And that's
I can really see myself using this and analyzing my vibrato rate to see if it is actually changing or if I'm just hearing a change between like,
Yeah.
for me in particular, open
Yeah.
vowels
Yeah.
versus like closed
Well, I
vowels.
think, yeah, you know, now that you've got Voce Vista and you're
Mhm.
getting a little more facile with it,
Yeah.
yeah, record yourself when you're practicing going, if I close my mouth a little bit, that
Yeah.
affected my rate.
Right.
Yeah, Yeah.
Or even I hear a change, is there actually a change?
Is there actually a change, or am I just on crack today?
Yeah. And if I do hear a change and there's not actually a change, maybe I should make a change by narrowing or whatever.
Yeah.
So that I feel like it is matching psychoacoustically.
To whoever's listening to
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, can't that be dangerous though? If
Sure.
you're creating your own, like, if you're listening to yourself too much,